Rain was coming down hard as Abdullah pulled his car off the lonely country highway. Wipers squeaked across the windshield, struggling to keep up. A flickering sign appeared through the sheets of rain: Cornfield Motel, vacancy. He sighed with relief. After 6 hours of driving, his eyes burned and his back ached. He wasn't supposed to be here. The plan was to stay in a big hotel another 30 miles up. But the GPS had rerouted him through backroads after a major accident blocked the interstate. The motel sat isolated, surrounded by endless rows of towering corn that swayed in the storm. No other buildings in sight. Just corn and that buzzing neon sign. As he parked and stepped out, the sound hit him. Something faint, distant, like a scream carried by the wind. He froze. Looked around. Nothing but corn. Probably just the wind, he muttered, shaking it off as he hurried to the office. Inside, the lighting was dim. A man in his 60s stood behind the counter, wearing a faded motel uniform. He didn't smile. "You're lucky," the man said in a dry, hollow voice. "We don't usually get guests on stormy nights." Abdullah forced a smile. Just needed a place to crash. Highways shut. The man slid over a key. "Room 7. You'll hear things," he added, eyes locking onto Abdullah's. "Ignore them." Things. Voices. Screams. Sometimes knocking. The corn plays tricks on the ears. Abdullah stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or be concerned. "Right, thanks." As he walked toward his room, the rain briefly stopped, and in that sudden silence, he heard it again. A scream. Closer this time. He turned slowly toward the cornfield. The rows stood perfectly still now, almost watching. He shook his head and entered room 7, unaware that the minute the door shut behind him, a figure stepped silently out from the corn, barefoot and pale, eyes wide with madness. And it just stood there, staring at his window. Abdullah paused, squinting into the darkness. The scream had been brief, almost like his mind had imagined it. He shook his head and hurried toward the front office, soaked by the time he reached the door. Inside, the air was stale. A small desk sat under a yellowed ceiling light, and behind it, an old man appeared from a back room. His skin was pale and creased like old paper, and his eyes, cold and glassy, studied Abdullah without blinking. "You lost, son?" the man asked, voice raspy. "Just passing through. Need a room for the night." The man nodded slowly, like he was unsure. "Only one left. Room 6. Last one down the row." As Abdullah handed over some cash, he noticed something strange: a guest book open on the counter. The last 5 names had been scratched out so deeply that the paper was torn. Dates next to them were all the same: March 15th. Today's date. He pointed. "That happened often." The old man smiled faintly. "People don't always stay the night." The keys jingled as he slid them across. Abdullah took them, unease tightening in his gut. Outside, the storm had calmed, but the cornfields looked darker than before, as if something was lurking just beyond the rows. As he walked toward room 6, he noticed something chilling. Every room before his was dark, except room 5. A light was on, and behind the curtain, he thought he saw a figure staring at him. But when he turned back for a second glance, the curtain moved, and the light turned off. The key felt oddly cold in Abdullah's hand as he stepped back into the rain. The motel had 6 rooms in a straight line, each with a chipped red door and a single dim porch light, buzzing with moths. Room 6 was at the very end, its light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive. As he walked past the other doors, he noticed something strange. No other cars were parked outside. The motel was supposedly full, yet looked deserted. Reaching room 6, he unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was thick, musty, like the room hadn't been touched in years. The wallpaper was peeling, the carpet was damp, and a faint smell of mold lingered. The bathroom door creaked on its own just slightly, and a draft slipped through the cracked window. He tossed his bag on the bed, tried to shake off the unease. Maybe it was just exhaustion. But as he sat down, he noticed something on the bedside table, a journal leather-bound, left open on a page, with smudged ink. "If you're reading this, you heard the scream too. Don't stay past midnight. Whatever you do, don't open the curtains. It sees through the corn." A loud creak echoed from the ceiling above. But this motel was only 1 floor. Abdullah leaned closer, his fingers trembling as he turned the crumpled page of the journal. The ink had bled from moisture, but parts of the message were still legible. "They come at midnight. From the corn. They scream to lure you. Don't look out the window. Don't answer the door. Whatever you hear, don't follow it. His throat went dry. He flipped a few more pages, each one filled with panicked handwriting, drawings of stick figures surrounded by corn stalks, black eyes in the dark, and cryptic words like "echoes feed them" and "the motel is a trap." Just then, the bedside lamp flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A beat of silence. Then tap, tap, tap. It came from the window. Abdullah's breath caught in his chest. He remembered the journal's warning, "Don't look out the window." The tapping grew louder, more urgent, like long fingers drumming the glass. Then a voice. Faint, childlike. "Help me." Right outside his window. He stood frozen. Another voice followed. Identical. "Help me." Two voices, one overlapping the other. Unnatural. Echoing. He stepped back, heart pounding. Then, the doorknob behind him began to turn. Slowly. Abdullah spun around, no one there. Just the damp, decaying wallpaper and the groan of the wind pressing against the motel walls. But the whisper, it had been right behind him, as if someone had leaned in close enough to touch his neck. His pulse thundered in his ears. The air in the room had turned ice cold, heavy like a storm was about to burst inside rather than out. And then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate thuds. At the door. He backed farther into the room, nearly tripping over the chair. The knock came again, louder, meaner. Abdullah's eyes darted to the journal. Another line caught his attention, hastily scrawled near the bottom of the last page. "Midnight is the feeding hour. Don't make a sound. Don't move. They listen." His hand trembled as he checked his phone. 11:59 p.m. A shiver ran down his spine. One more minute. Just one more. Suddenly, the motel's hallway light, a dim yellow glow seeping under the door, snapped off. Total blackness now, except the faint moonlight slipping through the curtain edges. Then came the creak of footsteps. Slow, crunching the damp carpet outside. And then breathing. Loud wheezing, inhuman breathing right outside his door. Something scratched at the wood. Not like nails, more like bones dragging across it. Abdullah dropped to the floor, crawled behind the bed, trying not to even breathe. The door handle twisted again. This time it didn't stop. Then came the voice, no longer childlike. It was a guttural, broken thing. "We saw you, you looked, you listened." Suddenly, boom. The door shook like someone rammed it with full force. The hinges groaned. Another hit, boom. Wood cracked. Abdullah clenched his fists, whispering prayers under his breath, as the final blow shattered the lock. The door swung open, and in the silence that followed, nothing entered, just the sound of wind, and the endless whisper of swaying corn. But Abdullah didn't move. Not until a soft voice, from under the bed behind him, whispered, "You're not supposed to survive the first night." The dim hallway light outside room 6 flickered, then went out completely, plunging everything into suffocating black. Inside, Abdullah stood frozen, his back against the cold wall, phone clutched in a death grip, its screen now the only source of light. The clock turned. 12 a.m. As the minute changed, the air shifted. It was like the motel itself exhaled and something else inhaled. The door creaked, not from someone knocking anymore, but from pressure. Like something was leaning against it. Then the whispering started. Dozens of voices, murmuring just beyond the door. Men, women, children, all speaking at once, some crying, some laughing, some growling in low, inhuman tones. "Room 6, open up, join us, don't hide, we see you." Abdullah dropped to the floor, crawling beneath the window, pressing his back to the bed. The journal had warned about this exact moment. They feed on sound, on fear, on movement. He held his breath. The doorknob began to twist, slowly at first, then violently, spinning back and forth, faster and faster. The door thudded like it was being slammed into by something massive. Then silence. Not a peaceful silence. A watching silence. Abdullah stared at the door, phone light flickering now, battery at 4%. And then, with a slow, deliberate click, the lock on the door began to turn on its own. Once. Twice. It unlocked. He scrambled up and pressed himself against it, bracing it with all his strength. Something on the other side pushed back, not with brute force, but with something worse. Intent. Like it knew he was afraid. Like it wanted him to scream. A voice, no longer childlike, but deep and ancient, whispered through the crack in the door. "No one ever leaves room 6. And then the walls began to bleed. Dark, Thick liquid seeped from the corners of the ceiling, trickling down like veins opening up. The floorboards groaned beneath him as if something massive was moving underneath the room. From the ceiling vent above, a skeletal hand, long and twisted, reached halfway through, fingers clicking unnaturally as it groped the air, searching. Abdullah wanted to scream, but he didn't. He couldn't. He remembered the warning. Don't make a sound. Don't move. He crouched low, heart screaming in his chest while his body remained locked in silence. And then, a face appeared in the window. Pale, hollow eyes, mouth stretched into an impossible grin. It didn't knock. It just stared and whispered, "You're already part of us." The doorknob twisted slowly, then stopped. Silence fell. For a moment, Abdullah thought, maybe it's over. He exhaled. Big mistake. The door slammed open with unnatural force, with splintering like a scream. But no one entered. Not at first. Instead, the hallway outside had changed. The cornfield was now there, where the parking lot should be. Thick stalks swayed under moonlight, stretching endlessly into blackness. Fog clung to the roots. Then they came. Figures. Tall, thin, faceless. Their skin looked like dried husks, their limbs moving with sickening grace, cracking and twitching as if blown by wind that wasn't there. They glided toward the room. Behind them, more screams echoed from inside the corn. Abdullah crawled back, whispering prayers, heart thundering. One of the creatures stepped inside. Its mouth slowly opened, not to speak, but to echo a scream exactly like his own voice. "Let me in." It moaned, mimicking his panic. Abdullah grabbed the journal and flung it at the creature. The instant it struck, the figure shattered into black dust, like burnt ash in the air. The other screeched and recoiled. On the last page of the journal, something new had appeared, words that hadn't been there before. Only one escapes per night. One room. One scream. The rest become part of the field. Realization hit. This wasn't just a haunted motel. It was a trap, a harvest site. The screams weren't from victims, they were baits for new ones. Abdullah ran. Through the broken door. Into the cornfield. The stalks slapped his face. Shadows twisted beside him. But he didn't stop. Not until the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. And the field vanished. He stood alone in the middle of an empty parking lot. The motel was gone. The road stretched quietly ahead. Only the scream still echoed in his ears, his own voice, stuck forever in that place.